Hey guys, what's up? I hope you guys are enjoying these vlogs. So I'm going to be reading you guys a vlog today about Guatape, Colombia. Again, I'm doing these all in one take. I've just been reading my journal here and I'm going to be trying to explain to you guys what was happening in Guatape. There's definitely some awesome journeys we went on, and just a little disclaimer, it's 6 o'clock, 6:30 where I am right now, and I got up at 6:30 on 4 hours of sleep, so I'm a little bit loopy at the moment, but I really want to make sure I get these videos recorded for you guys and for myself so that I have them before I go out on any more journeys and make sure that this comes to a close. So I'm going to be talking about Guatape. Before I do that, I actually realized on my Medellin trip I forgot to I took out one story, or I didn't realize I missed a story about some paragliding that we did. So the following day after we had kind of gone out to Guatape and come back, because Guatape and Medellin for us, we were in Medellin, and then we went to Guatape for a day trip, and then we came back to Medellin, and this is the story of Medellin to start. So the following day we took a journey to San Felix, a small area outside of Medellin, and enjoyed some paragliding. It was quite the journey, and I really had no idea where or how to get there, but I led Kyle, Janina, and Caleb out there after some help from the locals on a bus. We arrived suited up and were ready to take flight as the weather conditions were rapidly changing. The best part of this experience was the takeoff. Running towards a cliff, and moments before reaching the edge, the wind grabs you, lifts you gracefully and gradually, and you start to soar over the valley. And after the flight, we got to the local bus towards the metro and got to see what rural Medellin looked like as we weaved in and out of small dusty paved roads with consumer shops here and there and everywhere. So just a really quick on the actual experience of paragliding. It was really cool to, come off that cliff and just soar. Like, you just dropped and then you just started soaring, and you could really just have a great time flying through the space that you were dealing with at that time. And you're flying, and all there is you, some guide, and a parachute, and it's like skydiving. It's the same thing, but this time it was a little different because it wasn't as inaccessible, I think. People can paraglide a lot more easily. You just have to go climb up to an elevation place where then there's a slight decrease or a drop off of a cliff, and know the wind conditions and know it's going to pick you up. And it was really just a really fun time. I never really experienced something that was, subtle. It wasn't like a crazy experience like skydiving. It was just a subtle experience that, was very graceful, as I said. And so yeah, after we landed and we went and we weaved through these streets on the local bus back to the local skyline, or the local tram there that goes down the valley. And I do remember all the shops everywhere. It was just like, it was a lot, because you realize that these people, they're not necessarily living in poverty, but they definitely are living in a world that was so heavily influenced by Western culture that they, had shops and all this capitalistic societal world where people were just engaging with shops all the time. All these, quick shops, these barber shops, these, corner stores, things that, you look at the products and stuff that are inside these shops and they're not sustainable. You look at the buildings and how they're built. They weren't built as like an ecological building or any kind of sustainable green infrastructure. And it really dawns on you that, like, this is how most of the world lives and survives, is just by surviving, not thriving. And that's when for me, my heart really is with those people, and I really truly believe that we need to do something to help these people. So I've been, playing in my head trying to figure out what that is, but over time, these travel experiences have definitely impacted me in a way that I haven't really been able to put a pulse on, and that's why I'm recording these videos, because I want to talk about the experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly of these travel experiences. And that was definitely one of the more ugly places that I kind of had to encounter in the world, when you land in the middle of the favelas into this, decrepit soccer field that kids play on in the afternoons, and get on a bus and get on some public transit bus in the afternoon of Medellin and start getting your way back into the town, and you just start seeing all sorts of people in all sorts of areas of this huge metropolitan city they call Medellin, that, most people go to Medellin and they just stay in one area and they don't really venture out into the actual city of Medellin and all the different favelas that there are. And that was the closest and realest experience we really had with Colombian culture, I felt like, from a day-to-day perspective, not like a past perspective. And so it was really quite something. And so, yeah, now I'm going to talk to you guys about our trip to Guatape, which it was definitely something, because Caleb and I went out to Guatape at that time basically to go on a motorcycle trip. We wanted to go on a couple-day touring trip on some motorbikes, and there was definitely some adventures that happened. So I'm just going to read the story. The following day, Caleb and I decided to depart with the group and head back to Guatape for a few days, hoping to meet up with Kyle and Nico the next morning, which never panned out. We searched our plans and decided to start our motorbike trip a day early. We headed down to the shop and got our gear sorted out by a guy named James, the owner, and his girlfriend, who were from Denver. And the crazy thing is, James taught Caleb how to ride a motorcycle, and I was a little frightened by what was to come, considering it took James and Caleb an hour to return from their little venture of training. But off we went, and on the way to San Rafael and San Carlos with the hopes of getting to Alajuela by nightfall. After 2 hours of riding, both of us were finally comfortable on the bikes, and that's when the unthinkable happened. And really, I mean, it was the unthinkable. So as we came up this hill, it was an upward sloping hill, and it came up and then it veered down to the left, and then it went back down and to the right. And as we came up to the left and down, up and over to the left and down, there was a small landslide that had occurred, and some dust had come across the road. And I was leading the way, and I came across this dust slick, and as I was turning down right over this dust slick, my foot brake, which is the back brake, I slipped on it too much, and I ended up really, the bike slid out from under me, and I slid around this blind corner and obviously ravaged the right side of my shoulder quite heavily, bashed my left elbow on to regain my balance on the other side as I was sliding this bike around this blind corner. And it was like, holy crap, I don't know what's going to happen here. And I just like really remember my life just like boom, flashing in front of my eyes. And yeah, I'm just going to read what I wrote here before I actually try and go into too much detail there. But yeah. It was a lot. I'm sorry. I really have a challenge of just like playing it through my head, because it was such a scary experience, and the crash happened too fast. My head slammed on the pavement. My elbow smashed the road. My knee took the brunt of it. Caleb rushed up the hill, grabbed my bike as I limped down the road, and then Caleb took my bags as one might do, because my shoulder also took a bit of a bang. And within seconds, he was up close taking pictures, documenting my flesh wounds, and I was wincing in pain. Eventually, Caleb decided to take a look at the wounds, clean them up, and bandage them, my elbow with a sleeve of my shirt. This whole process only took a few minutes, and we were back on the road, slower than before, but still back on the road, using the handlebars as a sling rest for my shoulder and a light backpack because Caleb took my bags. And yeah, I guess that's why I was so shook, because I mean, it literally happened so quickly, and we were in the middle of nowhere, and we didn't really know what decisions to make. We didn't have cell phones, we had nothing. We got in an accident. We slid this bike. Luckily, it still ran and everything was fine, and the steering was good, and we literally got back on the bikes like 15 minutes later, and I was in serious pain. I had no pain meds or anything, and yeah, it was like, I mean, you can obviously tell just from the way I'm talking about this experience, it was something that definitely shook me to my core. So eventually we hit this city of San Carlos and ate a late lunch and had an amazing rack of ribs while icing my shoulder and knee, preparing for the second leg of our journey, because we weren't going to stay there for the night. And the second part was mainly dirt road, up through the mountain pass back towards San Rafael. The terrain was a lot more technical, and Caleb quickly learned how to maneuver around the rough patches, but he fell into some trouble starting the bike on the hills after stalling the engine several times. So we decided to switch bikes to avoid getting stuck in the middle of nowhere, Colombia. Eventually we reached the top of the mountain pass, but by then night had fallen and was upon us, and we descended with the descent was significantly more challenging. Using our headlights, we made it back to town, slowly but surely, and back onto the main road where the journey continued. A few minutes out of the town of the main road, the rain started to fall, and as it started as a mild concern, but quickly escalated. Downpour as we slowly geared down from fourth to second to third down, and the fog grew thicker to the point where I could barely see Caleb's tail lights 10 meters ahead of me, let alone the local motorbikers in front of Caleb that were followed all the way back. We decided to stop once we reached the turnoff for Algeciras, our overnight stop, but as fate would have it, we ended up following our friends right back to Guatape and decided to stay the night back at the Lakeview Hostel. Let James and Charlotte know about our day and enjoy a few beers at the bike shop and hostel, telling the stories of the eventful day. Caleb hustled beers out of travelers by playing chess at the end of this whole thing. And yeah, I guess that's what I wrote down, and I'm playing it back in my head, and that's pretty accurate as to what happened. I mean, I got in this motorcycle accident, and it startled me quite a bit. I was in a lot of pain, and I knew we had to go back, and we had to keep our journey going. We didn't really have the maps we needed, and a lot of learning experiences happened from this trip. I mean, the amount of shit that could have gone wrong was off the charts of risk. It wasn't even like, not really fathomable. We were in the middle of nowhere. We ended up having to go, after we got lunch, right, we basically were like, let's keep pushing forward, and we got on these dirt roads, and it was like, chickens crossing the road. No one would have spoken English out there. If we ran out of gas or anything would have happened to us. I mean, all these questions in my head weren't really questions in my head at that point. I mean, I was literally in pain. My knee had gouges in them. My shoulder was ruthlessly hurting, and I luckily didn't dislocate anything or break anything, and it wasn't like that kind of pain. It was just more like really deep tissue bruises that, I had to ride a touring bike on a dirt road for like 5 hours after that. And I think it was definitely a sign when the fog set in and the rain set in, and we started following these bikers, and we just followed, and they led us right back to Guatape, and we were like, a huge sigh of relief. We're like, oh my God, like, thank God, like, thank you universe for leading us back home safely and letting us just debrief and drink some beers and go to sleep and wake up the next day and figure out what we were going to do, if anything. I mean, it was just a lot, but a hell of a story, and I'm sure I could tell you more about the story later, but that's pretty much the gist of what happened. And it just kind of I never will be the same after, getting in a motorcycle accident and rolling around a blind corner. But the next day was a lot lighter hearted, and we organized a last minute tour of Pablo Escobar's lake house in Guatape. It was more like a massive property with houses, many rooms, guest houses, pool house, a horseback riding course, a dirt bike riding track, soccer pitch, a lakefront activity house. The whole tour was led in Spanish, so luckily we had Brian and Connor along with us who spoke Spanish, and we learned that Pablo had built the property as a personal prison with watchtowers and all, and that it had been bombed. This estate of his at Pablo Escobar's house had literally been bombed. That's how much people wanted him to die. After the walking tour on the premise, we geared up, and got to go paintball in his old guest house and courtyard. Caleb and I won every game against Brian and Connor, and on the way back to the hostel, we made the last decision not to continue on our motorbike tour and head back to Medellin for their welcoming of December party. Celebrations on the bus began pretty much right away, actually, when, by irony, on the way back from this second time we went to Guatape, we ran into Jack and Joe. And I mean, if you can watch the clips from Peru in Mancora, that's where I met Jack and Joe. And Jack and Joe and I guess we saw each other as well in Baños, Ecuador, and then again now, we didn't even plan it, and we saw each other again in Guatape. And Jack and Joe, if you watch the videos, I mean, Jack and Joe are awesome people. They're my friends still to this day in Vancouver, and acquaintances that moved back up to Vancouver from London after they were finished travel, so it was really cool to bump into them, literally just like you bump into friends down on a bus in your local community. But we were doing that, bumping into them in another area of South America, traveling around, and it was just so cool to see them and to just continuously see people like that through the trip. And so after that, we got back to Medellin, and that was really the trip of Guatape. It was just that motorcycle tour and checking out Pablo Escobar's house. But in the end, it was like, holy crap. Yeah, getting in a motorcycle accident is definitely something that doesn't kind of sit lightly with anybody. And I really don't talk about it that much and realize that, those are the kinds of risks that you take that you don't really realize the impact that would have had if something had gone increasingly worse in that situation, the people that would have been impacted by it. And that's why I think to this day, like, that experience really did shape my ability to make decisions. And I like going on adventures still, but there's definitely a risk tolerance that I am not okay with, because I understand to a little bit of a better degree the impact that accident would have had on my life if I was just being free and careless. So I guess I just wanted to share that lifelong experience with you guys, and I hope you guys are enjoying these things. Like I said, I'm a little bit loopy. It's 6:30 here, and I've been up for 12 hours with only 4 hours of sleep. So I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. I'm going to keep trying to pump them out here either tonight or tomorrow, and I really enjoy doing these. So we'll talk to you guys later, and keep it Kazin, boys and girls. Ciao.